Malaya made nearly no sound, willing herself into something light-footed, predatory, a creature elided into the bush. On her right calf, she bore the tattooed scales of an eagle's claw, the triple talons inked over the bones of her foot. On her heel, the black scythe of the hallux. These were the weapons of the bald eagle, the symbol of her nation. On her left calf, she carried the spots of the Visayan leopard cat, native to the islands of her grandfather, a Philippine scout who'd marched the death road out of Bataan when the fallen were beheaded by a samurai sword. On the sole of that foot, the paw print of the leopard cat. Here were the bloodlines that rooted her, that sprang her coal-eyed and wild from the earth. The truck skidded to a halt before the firehouse bays, rocking on its wheels as if summoned there. Little Anse Caulfield jumped down from the cab, his back-cut cowboy heels clacking in the gravel. He was a square-jawed bantam, built like a postage stamp, bow-legged like the old jockey he was. He wore a bush hat, the brim pinned on one side, and the small, round eyeglasses of a small-town clerk, his nose smashed broad and flat against his cheeks, as if by God's thumbs. His eyes were iron gray. In one hand, he held a double rifle, like for shooting elephant. He stood before the open bay, squinting at Lope. "You ain't seen a lion, have you?" Lope stood from the wheel, snapping the rag at the end of one long, dark arm. "Lord," he said, "not again." Thunder Boy was a wonder of a horse, a storm gray stallion bouldered with power. His shoulders and haunches pulsed like thunderclouds. His hooves gleamed as if shoe-shined. His black eyes, long lashed, looked Anse up and down, taking in his racing silks, his visored helmet, his 5-ounce cheater boots. Anse touched the horse's neck, fingering the veins there, the great rivers of blood. The horse nuzzled him in the crook of his neck, telling him he would run. He would run as hard and long as necessary. He would run his heart out. Mosi is born in call, a cub curled in a ghostly white veil. He doesn't know he has entered the world of light, of men. His eyes are closed. He believes he swims yet in the warm sea of his mother's womb, and he might stay there, never waking, passing from birth to death within the same rare shroud. But the birth of his sister wakes him. She comes curling from his mother's vent, slick with blood and afterbirth, and her furred haunches bump him to life. Tiny white splinters of claw emerge from his paws, and he cuts through the thin membrane that binds him against the world, emerging into air and light. He is blind at first, like all cubs. He lives in the warm, fuzzy tumble of his siblings. He feels the rough, possessive tongue of his mother, cleaning him, and unravels the sweet white string of her milk. His world is hillocks of fur and the gravel of tiny throats, and hunger. Already he knows it, this ringing hollow in his belly for milk and blood. He cannot be sated, but he tries and tries, sucking at the teat. His mother carries him by the scruff of his neck, a trophy dangling from the protective cage of her teeth. In the 1980s, Delk had played football alongside the great Herschel Walker, the patron saint of Georgia, a tailback who'd raced freight trains to build his speed and thumped out 2,000 push-ups per day, transforming himself from a boy into a god. O.U. Herschel Walker. This human locomotive, built of an iron will, had roared through linebackers across the South until the radios crackled there was sugar falling out of the sky. Sugar falling out of the sky. The Georgia Bulldogs were going to the Sugar Bowl. Delk had been there that championship season, the only man, said the papers, who could keep up with the rabid mania of Herschel's training regimen. Horn would stare down the beast until it yielded, or else. Slowly the fierce sparks in the creature's eyes began to dull, even soften, the life dying out in those dark worlds, death rolling in like a fog. The other wolves stood in a ring, watching, their tongues hanging red. Some whined with anxiety or growled, as if urging one champion or the other. Onyx's eyes were white-rimmed with fear now, but he did not let up. His jaws were locked, his lungs choked with death fire. His hind legs scrabbled uselessly at the man's rump, his paws unable to gain purchase or leverage. Horn gave no words of encouragement. He simply stared, spearing his dominance into the yellow eyes. If the animal could not live as beta of the pack, it would die. Horn saw the shift in the wolf's eyes, the precise instant of release. They broke from their spell of power, the pupils widening like tunnels accepting light. They diffused into a haze of submission, even love.